My friend's mom said, "This stays between us." And I'll never forget it. I don't really know why I still go to that cafe on Sundays. It isn't close to my apartment, and the coffee is nothing special. But it's quiet, and the light through the front window has a way of softening everything, like it forgives you for wasting time. That's where I first noticed her. She wasn't doing anything unusual, just standing by the counter, reading the small chalkboard menu like she hadn't already been there 100 times. My friend's mom. I hadn't seen her in years. Not since high school, when I used to crash at their place after late study nights. She didn't spot me right away. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the kind of small, unconscious gesture you don't forget once you've seen it a few times. Same dark hair, a little shorter now, falling just past her shoulders. She ordered her drink, black coffee, no sugar, just like before. I almost didn't say anything. I almost let her walk out. But something in me, maybe the part that hated the silence of my own apartment, spoke first. "Mrs. Hale?" She turned, surprised, and for a second I felt 16 again, standing in their kitchen while she asked if we wanted more pizza. "Oh," she said, smiling in recognition. "It's been years." Her voice was exactly as I remembered, low, calm, a little wry at the edges. I shifted awkwardly, hands in my pockets. "Yeah, I come here sometimes." She glanced at my half-empty cup. "I can see that." A pause. "Do you mind if I join you?" I didn't. Of course I didn't. We sat across from each other in the corner booth, steam curling from her cup. She asked about school, about work, in that polite way adults do when they're not sure how much of your life they're allowed to ask about anymore. "I'm done with classes," I said, folding and refolding the paper napkin by my cup. "Just figuring out what comes next." Her eyes lingered on my hands. "That's harder than people admit." There was a quiet between us. Not uncomfortable, exactly, but weighted. The kind of silence where you're suddenly aware of the sounds around you. The scrape of a chair, the hiss of the espresso machine, someone tapping their phone against the table. She smiled faintly, as if to lighten it. "You still drink your coffee too hot. I remember you burning your tongue at our house." I looked up, surprised she remembered. "You remember that?" "Of course." Her gaze didn't drop this time. It was strange, the way the years folded in on themselves. She was still the woman who drove us to baseball practice, who set out bowls of chips for movie nights. But now she sat across from me, her sleeves rolled just enough to show the faint lines on her wrist, her laugh softer, like it had been used carefully over the years. I noticed myself glancing too long at her hands when she reached for her cup, the way she held it in both palms like she needed the warmth. "You look like you're carrying too much on your shoulders," she said quietly. I wanted to tell her about the messages I typed out to people and never sent. The long nights staring at the ceiling. The feeling that my life hadn't really started, but time was already running. Instead, I just said, "Maybe." She tilted her head, studying me. Then she let it go. We talked for nearly an hour, though it didn't feel like that. When she finally stood to leave, she hesitated, as though deciding something in her head. "It was good to see you again," she said, her hand brushing the table, fingertips tapping once before she pulled them away. "You too." She gave a small nod, almost formal, then turned toward the door. I thought that was the end of it, just a chance run-in. One of those coincidences you remember for a week before it fades. But as I walked home later, my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "Don't tell anyone you saw me today. This stays between us." I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, staring at the screen. I could almost hear her voice in the words. And I knew. I wasn't going to forget it. Part 2. Expanding the conflict, I didn't reply to her message right away. I stared at it, screen glowing in the dark of my room, thumb hovering over the keyboard. The words felt heavier than they should have. It wasn't just a reminder to keep quiet. It felt like an invitation. I typed out "sure" and deleted it. Typed again, paused, and finally just sent back, "Okay." The next Sunday, I found myself at the cafe again, though I told myself it wasn't because of her. Just habit. Routine. But she was there, sitting by the window this time, already halfway through her coffee. She noticed me right away and lifted her hand in a small wave. I sat down across from her, trying to act casual. My heart hadn't caught up. "You came back," she said, Stirring her drink, though there was nothing left to dissolve. I usually do, I lied. She smiled like she knew I was lying, but didn't call me on it. We talked about small things at first. Weather. Books stacked on her nightstand she hadn't touched. A neighbor who left their laundry too long in the shared machines. Then, without warning, she said, I don't know if you heard, but I'm divorced now. I blinked. No, I didn't. It's been almost 2 years. She pressed the rim of her cup to her lips, though she didn't drink. Strange how quickly people adjust to not asking about your husband anymore. I didn't know what to say, so I folded the paper sleeve from my coffee into smaller and smaller shapes. I'm sorry. She shook her head lightly. Don't be. Some things end. That's all. But her eyes lingered on mine a moment too long, as if checking whether I believed her. That night, I kept replaying it. Not just the words, but the way she said them. Quietly, without bitterness. Like she was used to holding the heavier parts of her life where no one could see. I thought about telling her how I'd been feeling too. This restless weight in my chest lately, like I was falling behind everyone else my age. But I didn't. Instead, the next time I saw her, I just asked if she wanted another coffee. She laughed. You're paying this time? Guess so. We sat in silence while I waited at the counter. When I came back, I noticed she had shifted her chair slightly, angled toward me. A small thing, but it made the air between us feel different. She asked about my parents, about whether I still played guitar like I used to. I admitted I hadn't picked it up in months. Why not? I shrugged. Feels pointless, I guess. Nothing you care about is pointless, she said, without hesitation. The words caught me off guard. My throat tightened, though I didn't show it. I just nodded, eyes on the coffee foam that had cooled too quickly. There were other moments like that. Small but sharp. She asked me once to carry a box from her car to her apartment. I followed her upstairs, her keys jingling in her hand, and for some reason I noticed the way her shoulders tightened when she unlocked the door, as if she hated that it was quiet inside. When I set the box down, she poured tea for both of us, though she didn't ask if I wanted any. We sat in her kitchen, cups steaming between us, neither of us speaking for long minutes. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, like something hanging just above us. I glanced at her hands again, curled loosely around the mug. She looked up at me then, catching my eyes before I could look away. You've grown up, she said softly. Have I? Her smile was small. More than you realize. I laughed under my breath, but it sounded wrong, almost nervous. She tilted her head, amused by it. Then, gently, she reached across the table and touched my wrist. Barely, just a brush of her fingers before she pulled them back. It could have been nothing, a friendly gesture. But it stayed with me long after I left her apartment, echoing louder than any words we had said. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. Part 3. Heightening suspense. I didn't see her the next Sunday. Or the one after that. The cafe felt smaller without her. I sat in the same booth anyway, drinking coffee that cooled too fast, folding napkins until they tore. My phone stayed face down on the table, though I checked it every few minutes. When she finally appeared again, it wasn't at the cafe. It was in the grocery store, late evening, fluorescent lights humming above us. She was holding a basket, staring at the rows of pasta sauce like she couldn't decide. She looked tired, but when she saw me, something in her face softened. Hey, I said too casually. You shop here? Sometimes. My throat felt dry. Her basket was light, just a carton of eggs, some bread. I reached for one of the jars near her, set it in her basket without asking. This one's good. She looked down at it, then at me. You always did have opinions. But her smile didn't quite last. We ended up walking out together, bags in hand. She hesitated by the parking lot, like she was about to say goodbye, but then said, Do you want a ride? I should have said no, but I didn't. Her car smelled faintly of coffee and something floral. A scarf was draped over the back seat. She drove with both hands on the wheel, eyes forward. Halfway to my place, she spoke. I shouldn't have texted you that night. About keeping it secret. I shifted in my seat. I didn't tell anyone. I know. She paused. That's not the point. The silence pressed down harder than her words. Streetlights passed over her face in fragments. Light, shadow, light again. At my building, She pulled up to the curb, but didn't unlock the doors right away. Her fingers tapped once against the steering wheel. "You're still close with Daniel?" she asked suddenly. I nodded. "My friend. Her son. The unspoken wall between us." She gave a small, sharp breath through her nose, almost a laugh. "Right." She finally unlocked the doors. "You should go." I didn't move. Not at first. My hand hovered over the seatbelt clip, but I looked at her instead. Her eyes flicked to mine. Held there. Too long. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Just the air, uneven. Her hand shifted slightly, like she almost reached for me but thought better of it. She pressed her palm flat against her thigh instead. The moment stretched thin, fragile. One leaned forward, and it would have broken. But she turned her face away, toward the window. "Good night." I swallowed. Opened the door. Stepped out into the cold. She didn't drive off until I was inside. And I kept thinking. If she had looked at me for 1 second longer, I don't know what would have happened. Part 4. Nearing the climax, it was late afternoon when I saw her again. I just left the library, carrying a book I wasn't sure I'd actually read, when I noticed her sitting on the bench outside the park. She wasn't doing anything, just watching kids play soccer on the grass, her hands folded in her lap. I almost walked past. Almost. But she looked up, and once she did, there was no pretending I hadn't seen her. "Hi," I said, stepping closer. Her smile was small, like it cost her something. "You're always turning up where I least expect you." I sat beside her, leaving a careful space between us. The wooden bench was cold. "You avoiding me?" I asked, before I could stop myself. Her eyes stayed on the field. "Maybe. Are you avoiding me?" I laughed, quiet and awkward. "Guess not." We sat in silence, watching the game. A whistle blew, shouts rang out, parents clapped. But the space between us stayed taut, a rope pulled too tight. After a while, she said, "Daniel's back in town next week." I nodded. "My friend." The reminder. The tether. "You two still talk?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, but my voice faltered. The truth was I hadn't replied to his last message. I couldn't explain why. Her hands tightened slightly in her lap. "Good." The word didn't sound like she meant it. A gust of wind blew through, carrying dust across the path. I reached into my bag and pulled out the book I'd just checked out, setting it between us like proof of some normalcy. She glanced at the title. "Still reading those?" "Sometimes. You used to stay up too late with them." Daniel would fall asleep, and I'd hear pages turning at 2 in the morning. I smiled, remembering. "You heard that?" "Of course." She finally looked at me. "I always heard you." Something in my chest shifted, sharp and unsteady. I swallowed. "Why are you telling me that?" Her eyes dropped. "Because I don't want you to think I never noticed you." The air went still. I didn't know where to put my hands. I rubbed at the edge of the book cover, trying to keep steady. "Mrs. Hale," I started. She cut in gently. "Don't call me that." The correction landed harder than I expected. My pulse quickened. Her voice was softer now. "You're Daniel's friend. You're 20 years younger." I keep telling myself those things. She stopped, pressed her lips together, as if holding the rest back. I leaned forward slightly, trying to catch her expression, and her fingers unfolded slowly, palms flat against her knees. "And it doesn't change how it feels to sit here with you." My throat went dry. The kids' game in front of us blurred into background noise. All I could focus on was the warmth radiating from the space between us, narrow as it was. "I think about that night in the car," I admitted. My words came out rougher than I intended. How close it was. How? "If you had looked at me just a little longer." She shut her eyes briefly, like she couldn't bear hearing it. Then opened them again. "That's exactly why we can't," she said, but it sounded more like a plea than a rule. Silence stretched. My hand inched on the bench, stopping just short of hers. Close enough to feel the pull. She noticed. She didn't move away. Her gaze fixed on me, steady, unflinching. And in it, something unspoken. A question. Neither of us asked it out loud. But it hung there, trembling, waiting. Part 5. The twist: I didn't see her the next day. Or the day after. The bench stayed empty when I passed the park. The cafe felt hollow, the window seat she liked untouched. Even the grocery aisle looked different without her basket balanced in her hands. I told myself not to notice. But I noticed everything. A week later, I finally saw her, outside her apartment building. She was standing with someone I didn't recognize. A man, maybe late 40s, leaning against his car with that too familiar casual stance. They weren't touching, but the way she tilted her head when he spoke made my chest tighten. I almost walked past. Almost. But she caught sight of me before I could. Her smile appeared quickly, too quickly. Hey. I nodded at the man, then back at her. Didn't mean to interrupt. You're not. Her voice was steady, but her eyes flicked between us like she wasn't sure who she was speaking to. The man gave me a polite nod. Old friend. I swallowed. Something like that. He excused himself a minute later, climbing into his car. She watched until he drove away. Only then did her shoulders drop, like she'd been holding herself upright. We walked in silence toward the corner store. She didn't explain, and I didn't ask, though the words pressed hard against my tongue. Finally, she said, that was my ex. He shows up sometimes. I tried to sound casual. Still talks to you. More than I want him to. Her hands slipped into her coat pockets. Less than he used to. I nodded, pretending the answer satisfied me. But it didn't. That night, I sat on my bed with my phone in hand. I typed out a message. Are you okay? Then deleted it. Do you still want to see me? Deleted. I keep thinking about that afternoon on the bench. Deleted. The screen glowed with nothing. My reflection stared back at me, waiting. I didn't send anything. She pulled back after that. No more casual invites. No more tea. At the cafe, she sat by the window with her phone out, eyes down, pretending not to see me. I mirrored her silence. It wasn't heartbreak. Not exactly. It was something duller. Like being paused mid-step. Like life had started to write the next line and then forgot to finish the sentence. One night, I walked past her building. Her lights were on. A shadow moved behind the curtains. Hers, I thought. I slowed, my hand brushing the railing that led up to her door. I could have knocked. Could have said I was just passing by, just wanted to check in. But I didn't. I stood there for a long minute, listening to the hum of a street lamp and the faint clatter of someone washing dishes upstairs. Then I kept walking. The night swallowed me whole, and I let it. Part 6. The climax had happened on a Thursday night, unexpected. I'd gone out for milk, nothing more. When I came back, she was standing at the mailboxes in the lobby of her building, sorting through envelopes like she didn't want to be seen. She looked up when I pushed the door open. For a second, we both froze. Then she sighed. You always turn up. I live next door, I said. It came out sharper than I meant. She tucked a letter back into her stack. That doesn't mean you should always be here. I set the milk down on the floor, hands tightening at my sides. Do you want me to stop? Her lips parted, then closed again. She leaned against the metal boxes, staring at them as if they held the answer. I don't know what I want, she said finally. The air was heavy. The kind of silence that pushes you towards saying too much. I stepped closer, not all the way. Just enough that her perfume, something faint, like citrus faded over the day, brushed against me. You've been avoiding me. Her eyes flicked up, guilty and tired. Because it's easier. Easier than what? Her laugh cracked at the edges. Then this. She gestured vaguely between us, letters still clutched in her hand. You're Daniel's friend. You're young. You're you, I cut in. That stopped her. For a moment, her face softened, like the weight she carried slipped just slightly. I wanted to tell her everything then. How I thought about her every time I passed the park bench, how the silence in my apartment felt louder after she left, how even the smallest touch from her replayed in my head until I couldn't breathe. But I didn't know if saying it out loud would make her pull away for good. So instead, I said, I don't care about the rules you keep naming. I just don't want to lose this. Her fingers trembled around the envelopes. She set them down slowly, carefully, like she needed both hands free to steady herself. You think I haven't wanted to say the same thing? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Every time I see you, it feels like I'm stepping closer to something I can't step back from. I swallowed hard. Then maybe don't step back. Her eyes closed for a beat. When she opened them, I saw the conflict, fear, guilt, something rawer underneath. She shook her head slightly, but she didn't move away. Instead, she reached up, brushing her fingers against my sleeve. Not a grab, not even a hold. Just enough to feel the fabric, like proof I was real. The gesture undid me more than any kiss could have. Her voice came out cracked but steady. I don't know how to let this be without losing too much. I didn't answer right away. I just let her hand linger there, warm even through the cotton. Finally, I whispered, then let's not name it. Let's just keep it. Her eyes searched mine, as if weighing every hidden cost. Then she gave the smallest nod. A surrender or a promise. Maybe both. We stood there in the dim lobby, milk sweating in its bag at my feet, letters abandoned on the counter. She exhaled, slow and shaking, then managed a half smile. Okay, not much more. Just that. But it was enough. Part 7. The conclusion time didn't race after that night. It didn't collapse into some dramatic rush forward. It just softened. We saw each other more, though never with a plan. The cafe, the bench, the grocery aisle. Sometimes her apartment, with tea steeping in chipped mugs and the low hum of her fridge filling the silence. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. One morning, weeks later, I walked into the cafe and found her already sitting by the window, black coffee in front of her. She looked up as I slid into the seat across from her. "You're late," she said, but her smile betrayed her. I checked my phone. 8:47 a.m., exactly the time I always showed up. "Right on time," I said. Her laugh was quiet, the kind you only hear when you're close enough. We didn't talk much about what we were. We didn't need to. The shape of it lived in the routines, her pouring too much hot water into the teapot, me taking the first sip anyway, my hand brushing the edge of her sleeve when I reached across the table. At the park bench, she leaned a little closer now. Not touching, not needing to. Just close enough that the space between us felt claimed. Sometimes, we'd fall into silence. Not the weighted kind that used to press down on us, but an easier silence. One that felt like a pause to breathe, not a wall. There were still reminders of what we risked. Once, Daniel called while I was there. I sat in her kitchen, listening to her voice shift into mother mode, steady and warm. I thought about what it would mean if he knew, if anyone knew. But when she hung up, she leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. Then she looked at me, and I knew she was choosing this. Choosing me, even if the world outside never did. It wasn't perfect. She still pulled away sometimes, caught in her own doubts. I still found myself drafting messages I never sent. But the distance didn't feel final anymore. It felt like part of us, something we learned to carry. One evening, I asked, half joking, "Do you ever regret it?" She didn't answer right away. She reached for her mug, cradling it between her palms, eyes focused on the steam. Finally, she said, "No. I just regret not letting myself be here sooner." That stayed with me. Now, when I think of us, it isn't the almosts I remember, the car, the first cafe meeting, the near miss on the bench. It's smaller things. The way she always stirred her tea twice before drinking, even when there was nothing left to dissolve. The way her gaze softened whenever she caught me watching her. And the mornings at 8:47 a.m., when she was already waiting, black coffee in hand, smiling like the day belonged to us. I don't know what the future will look like. I don't need to. All I know is that for now, life feels less paused, more lived. And when she looks at me, really looks, I feel seen in a way that makes all the quiet worth it. That's enough.